Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. Today we're talking about how to counter Cell Surge, which is probably a bit of a long overdue video, but I did want to do this now because this is going to be a very strong deck going into both the Pro Support TCG weekend and Nationals, a Pro Support TCG weekend. I do hope to see you there, but if not, make sure to tune into the stream tomorrow. I'll be sharing it on all my social media platforms if you guys want to check out a really awesome tournament tomorrow. I did say in yesterday's video that I was going to share my SS4 Toa deck today, but I did want to make sure I got this video out before the Pro Support weekend, just for players who, you know, wanted to help against Cell Surge going into that tournament. So the Toa video has been moved to Monday, so if you guys are looking forward to that profile, check back on Monday. Make sure to subscribe, of course, and if you guys want more competitive content while also supporting the channel, check out the Patreon down in the description. I actually just did the other day a primer article for the Pro Support weekend, and that format, even though it doesn't include set 15, is actually going to be more similar to set 15 than you think, so that article might give you some helpful resources. Anyway, we will get started. We always start these videos by talking about what the strategy that we want to counter aims to do. Now, firstly, look at this trio made in hell, right? We have the Cell Leader, we have Ribrianne, we have Dark Broly, Overwhelming Evil. These are the main cornerstones of the deck. The leader is one of the last remaining strong Surge leaders that can either put all battle cards you play in rest mode for the next turn, or pop a card and pick a random card out of your hand. Ribrianne is probably the main cornerstone of the deck, just like passively taking cards out of your hand. And one of the most broken things about this deck is what I talk about a lot, where this deck never ever has to attack the opponent until it's good and ready to. So it's never giving you resources off your life. You're never really plussing all that much unless your deck just naturally plusses in its own natural way, and they're taking cards from you passively, which is really annoying. And then Dark Broly, Overwhelming Unison, when they jam this card down onto the board, their engine is really going, because they can +2, they pitch a card, you pitch a card, and lose a battle card of your choice. But they're probably pitching cards to the drop area that they want there, like more Ribriannes, like Sand Instincts, like other cards they can get value of out of the drop area. This is very much a drop area centric deck, but unfortunately the drop area interruption cards don't really do all that much in terms of interrupting Cell Surge, because for one, a good Cell Surge player can make sure they put a Ribrianne in the drop that turn and then use it. Make sure they put a Parasitic Cell in the drop area that turn and use it if they're really afraid of drop area interruption. But besides that too, like, the drop area cards are not going to help you gain cards, except for maybe like Toa Twisted Sister, but still it's just probably not good enough to consider. But we'll talk about those cards in this video that'll help you with the strategy. But one of the main things I wanted to talk about strategy wise before we get into specific cards is that Cell Surge can actually kind of struggle when it's being stalled from its Awaken. And I learned this from the mirror match. In the Cell Surge mirror match, if you're having a hard time getting Awaken, you're probably in a losing position. So, you know, not all leaders in the format can do this, but if you're a leader that doesn't have to attack to draw and you have a really strong late game, try to stall Cell Surge at like 6 life, because they have to find their own parasitic cells to get Awakened. So by stalling them, you're really halting a lot of their tempo, and you're not allowing them to use their surge effects, because their surge effects can either interrupt you like crazy with putting all your stuff into rest mode, or they're just taking more cards out of your hand with the other surge effect. But you might even catch them in a scenario where they're not Awakened yet, or not at 4 life range yet, I should say, by turn 3, where they're playing Dark Broly. And even if your leader has to attack to draw cards, which of course you want to attack with your leader if it draws you cards, you can send your attacks to Dark Broly instead of at their life, again still stalling them out while drawing cards. Put it on them to awaken themselves. In the right circumstances, that can be really good. But anyways, let's get into some main cards that will help us with this matchup. The main 2 cards that are going to be your absolute best friends are Great Ape Son Goku Sand Instincts and Deborah Ritual at hand. Now, I know this seems really easy to just say, you know, play the cards that draw you cards, but there are actually very specific situations in which you need to use one card over the other. For example, aggro decks will benefit a lot more out of Deborah Ritual at hand, because the 2 energy from Goku Sand Instincts is going to cost a lot. So if you're playing a Gogeta Xeno, maybe you're playing a starter deck Spirit Boost Elite Vegeta, this Deborah can be really helpful, because one, it is a 15k attacker to attack your opponent, and it only costs 1 energy and draws you 2. As for Sand Instincts, is incredible in a deck like Soul Striker. Soul Striker should probably be maining 4 copies of Sand Instincts at this point, absolutely. So this is a really good card in a slower mid-range deck like that, where you'd want to, you know, be using more energy, playing a bit of a slower game, And Soul Striker is a great example of what I mentioned before, where, you know, you'll attack your opponent the first 2-3 turns of the game, but once they play their Dark Broly Unison, you can start attacking their Unison, and even though you won't be taking markers off of it, you might be able to stall their Awaken, which can help you out in the long run, because as Soul Striker, your late game is one of the best late games in the entire format. So that's a pretty good example of that. Different situations in which you want to use Instincts versus different situations you want to use Deborah. But as a lot of you guys probably know, Cell Surge does have an answer to Deborah, Dark Power Black Mass Sand. More and more Cell Surges are starting to main this card from what I've been seeing, but even if they're not, they're still sideboarding 2 to 3, even maybe 4 copies of this card, because it counters the card that counters their deck the hardest, which of course is Deborah Ritual at Hand. So I didn't really list cards here that are going to help you deal with BMS, because at this point in the game's existence, every deck has 1,000,001 cards that they can play for removal. So you really got to look at your deck, see what your deck has options for in terms of removal. If you're playing red, you might want something as simple as a -5k. If you're playing green, you have different negates that can pop this card. Blue and yellow might be a little bit tougher to deal with this, because the super clean early game spot removal for blue has been removed in the form of Galactic Buster. Yellow, you have to do weird things like rest it, attack into it more often than not, but there are some options in yellow and blue that help for early removal of Dark Power Black Mass Sand. So if you're really leaning into Deborah, you need to be equipped to deal with Dark Power Black Mass Sand, because what they'll do is they'll play BMS on whatever turn they're ready to go in. So for example, they'll play Dark Broly Unison on 3. If they're at 4 life, they'll activate Surge, they'll flip, they'll use 1 to play BMS, and they'll have 1 energy available for the turn. But that means now they can use Dark Broly, they can use the Deborah to take a marker off of it and search for a ball, making you pitch another card. So you've pitched 2, and your Deborahs are sitting dead in your hand because the BMS is on the board. They did lose 1 energy in that exchange though, so they can't also rebrand you on top of that, which is a good thing for you. But let's just say they play BMS turn 1 or play BMS turn 2, and then turn 3 they have all the energy available to Dark Broly, rebrand you. So you want to make sure you have some way to deal with BMS whenever they're going to play it. It's very, very important. We have a few more ways to get around Cell Surge, guys, but real quick, a word from today's video sponsor. Dragon Ballers, real quick before we get into today's video, just want to share something with you guys that I am very excited about. PPG is going to be hosting the Pro Support TCG weekend in Dallas, Texas, the weekend of November 6th. It's going to be a giant TCG convention weekend hosting all your favorite games, obviously Dragon Ball Super, Digimon, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and more. Tournaments for all those. I'm actually going to be there commentating the Dragon Ball Super side of things, the main event on Saturday, the side events on Sunday. I absolutely cannot wait. And if you guys missed out on Gen Con or heard me talk about how much fun that was, you're 110% gonna want to be at the Pro Support TCG weekend. The other great thing too is it's just 2 weeks before Nationals, the biggest Dragon Ball Super tournament of the year, so you can get some invaluable practice there. But besides that, it's a convention. It's gonna be so much fun, especially for those of you guys like me that just absolutely love trading card games. Definitely check it out. The link to sign up will be in the description. I really hope to see you guys there. Now let's get into the video. Alright guys, once again, I do hope to see you at the Pro Support TCG weekend, but if you can't make it to play, definitely tune into the stream. I'll be commentating. I'll be sharing the links on all my social media platforms, so Facebook, Discord, here on YouTube, make sure to check. But anyways, what else beats Cell Surge? Aggro has a very, very favorable Cell Surge matchup. Cell Surge eats the decks alive that, you know, need time to set up, like the Soul Strikers, like the S4 Vegetas. A lot of these different slower decks, Cell Surge can have a really, really good time against, especially if they're not prepared, again, with something like Sand Instincts in the main deck. But if you're playing a very aggressive deck like Gogeta Xeno, like something red, like red U7 Gohan, like Spirit Boost Elite Vegeta, those can be really, really good strategies against Cell Surge, because they don't have the time to take your hand away. They might, you know, turn 1 Cell Kamehameha, they might turn 2 Rebrand, but if their turn 2 Rebrand, you're going into your turn 3, let's say you went first, you have 3 energy to quite possibly kill them. Like, you can very easily do 6 damage. Let's say they're at 6 life from the first 2 turns, or even 5 maybe. You can very easily do that much damage with a deck like Gogeta Xeno or a red aggro deck. Red aggro is not exactly the beast it used to be, but in that scenario where you're playing against a green yellow deck that's not very, very fluid with defense, like blue or blue yellow, you're going to be able to kill them in that spot if they leave themselves vulnerable. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind. If you really just don't like Cell Surge, you may want to play something more aggressive. Otherwise, again, tailor your mid-range or control deck to Cell Surge with most likely 4 copies of Sand Instincts in the main deck. That can be very helpful. The final card I want to talk about, this might seem like a troll pick, but is Zamasu the Eliminator. Not so much for Zamasu himself. This used to be a much bigger counter to Cell Surge though, when it actually was able to counterplay Dark Bullet Unison. That gave Icarus a actually pretty positive Cell Surge matchup. Now not so much, because you can't counterplay Unisons anymore. The real reason I include this card here is because of the keyword Indestructible. This is a pretty cool interaction where you can play a card like Zamasu Eliminator, or maybe even Zamasu Deity's Wrath. You're playing a green deck, and every time they activate Dark Broly's +2, you can just choose an indestructible card and it doesn't go away. You can still choose it even though it can't be removed. It just fails to get KO'd, which is a really cool interaction. Like if I'm playing Icarus, for example, and I don't have you know, Raider's Warcry in my hand, and a lot of Icarus decks don't play Instincts in the main deck, you would have Zamasu as your turn 2 play. I would definitely just play this card. You're still drawing a card, so you're replacing yourself, and if you weren't doing anything with your 2 energy anyway, you might as well play this card. Reason why: this is going to protect your board from Dark Broly Unison for the rest of the game. They really can't get rid of this card unless you combo it off. So this is a kind of a cool interaction if you're playing like maybe a pure Zamasu Goku Black deck, maybe you're playing blue yellow, or maybe you're playing green again with Zamasu Deity's Wrath. Having Indestructible on a card is going to be pretty helpful. But again, I know this is a bit of a shorter thing. I feel like I talked through a lot of different strategies you can use to beat Cell Surge, but realistically it does come down to outdrawing their hand control, being able to aggro them if you're playing an aggro deck, or stalling them out if you're playing a mid-range deck and you find the strategic opportunity to do that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any other tips for beating Cell Surge, leave it down in the comments below so everyone else can see. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.